a young girl sitting in the back seat of a car while her father drives them somewhere. This little girl, named Amina, keeps distracting her father as he drives, and before long, Amina, being mischievous, suddenly unbuckles her seatbelt, causing her father to immediately turn around, but in that moment he loses control of the car because of her reckless behavior. Amina suffers a severe skull injury. She is forced to undergo surgery where a titanium plate is placed inside her head. When she leaves the hospital, her behavior drastically changes for reasons no one can quite understand. Amina begins to distance herself from her parents, instead choosing to embrace their car. She holds the car close, almost lovingly. It is likely that this psychological shift is a direct result of the traumatic event she went through. Years later, Amina has grown into a rebellious teenager. She no longer feels ashamed of the scar running down the right side of her head, and she has also become an erotic dancer at motor racing events, with her sultry dance moves never failing to captivate the attention of the crowds attending these auto shows. Coincidentally, one of her fellow dancers, Zuri, becomes mesmerized by Amina's performance. Zuri, who works alongside her, seems drawn to Amina from the beginning, and after the show, while they are showering, Zuri, intrigued by Aminatriz, to strike up a conversation, but Amina shows little interest in what Zuri has to say. One night, as Amina heads toward her car, a stranger suddenly starts chasing her. Fortunately, Amina manages to get inside her car just in time, and it turns out the man is simply a fan eager to get her autograph. After receiving what he came for, the man expresses his admiration for Amina, then brazenly asks her for a kiss. Perhaps fed up and irritated by the fan's obnoxious behavior, Amina gives in to his request. But instead of a kiss, Amina kills the unfortunate man using a sharp hairpin. After realizing she has gotten foam from the man's mouth all over herself, Amina decides to return to the showroom bathroom to clean up. While she is washing herself, Amina hears a banging noise coming from the exhibition hall storage area, and curious, she leaves the bathroom to investigate the source of this mysterious sound. The noise leads her to a fiery painted car, the same car she danced with earlier somehow. The car suddenly roars to life on its own, even though no one has started it. Driven by her strange affection for vehicles, Amina climbs into the car completely naked, and it is here, in the dark, empty showroom, that the two share a heated moment. Logically speaking, what happens between Amina and the car is utterly absurd. Yet somehow in this bizarre reality they manage to exchange affection, despite one being a living, breathing human and the other just a lifeless vehicle. The next morning, Amina wakes up feeling a deep, aching pain all over her body, particularly in her most sensitive areas. As a night worker, Amina often spends her mornings and afternoons lounging in front of the television. She lives with her parents, though they rarely speak to her, and looking at the interior of their home, it is clear that Amina comes from a financially well-off family. Coincidentally, the television that Amina is watching broadcasts news about a series of murders where each victim has the same wound on their ear. This news further confirms that Amina is, in fact, a serial killer, although her father seems unaware that his daughter is directly involved in the recent string of violent crimes. One evening, Zuri's feelings are finally reciprocated when Amina and Zuri share a kiss by the beach. Feeling uncomfortable, Zuri suggests they go somewhere more private, but on the way, Amina suddenly feels nauseous and starts vomiting. That is when Amina begins to realize that she is pregnant. Her suspicions are confirmed as her belly grows larger, but inexplicably, black fluid starts to ooze from her abdomen. Terrified, Amina clings to Zuri without saying a word. Inside Zuri's luxurious home, Amina immediately attempts to perform an abortion using her hairpin. However, her efforts are in vain, and in fact, she grows even more frantic when she notices black liquid resembling engine oil staining the hairpin. For reasons unknown, Amina suddenly feels the urge to harm Zuri, who is in her embrace, but this time, unlike her previous victims, Zuri fights back. A fierce struggle ensues, though in the end, Amina still prevails. Amina does not stop there. She proceeds to brutally kill a guest who almost catches her in the act by savagely driving a chair leg down the throat of the unfortunate man, killing him instantly. Initially, Amina thought Zuri was the only person in the mansion, but to her surprise, there are several other guests in the house, and as a result, Amina has no choice but to kill everyone inside. With her innocent and unassuming demeanor, Amina manages to stab a large man she hugs before chasing a naked woman who tries to flee. However, her attempt to kill the woman fails. This marks the first time someone has ever escaped Amina's brutality, and naturally, Amina quickly flees the scene. When Amina returns home, she is greeted by her father's cold, accusing gaze. Still boiling with anger, Amina gathers flammable materials and brings them down to the basement, and without any clear reason, she sets everything on fire. Just before the flames spread upstairs, she locks her parents inside their bedroom. After killing both her father and mother, Amina begins wandering aimlessly, now a fugitive wanted by the police for her string of murders. It is worth noting that one person managed to escape Amina's grasp, and that person has likely given the police a description of Amina, making it only a matter of time before they catch her. While sitting in a train station waiting area, Amina unintentionally spots a missing child. Posterth boy in the picture bears a slight resemblance to her own facing. It is at that moment that a crazy idea pops into Amina's head. Wasting no time, she rushes to the station restroom. Amina sees this as her chance to evade the police. She alters her appearance by cutting her hair and covering her most defining features, although she struggles to conceal her increasingly swollen belly. That did not stop her from carrying out her insane plan. She goes even further by punching herself and breaking her own nose, enduring the excruciating pain, all in an effort to deceive anyone she encounters, so that no one will suspect she is actually a woman. After feeling the sting of her broken nose, she heads to the police station, pretending to be Kofi, being the name of a boy who went missing 10 years ago at the age of 7. After waiting for several minutes, the police finally reunite Amina with Kofi's father, a middle-aged man whose face is filled with anxiety and who is named Kwame. Just before a detective introduces the false Kofi to Kwame, he offers a DNA test for both of them, but for some reason, Kwame declines the suggestion. Unwittingly, Kwame falls into Amina's trap, and without a second thought, he takes the fake Kofi home with him. To avoid confusion, from this point on, let us refer to Amina as Kofi, since throughout the rest of the story she continues to pose as Kwame's son. Still overwhelmed with emotions, Kwame repeatedly pleads with Kofi to speak to him. But Kofi remains silent, carefully maintaining the facade to ensure that Kwame does not uncover her disguise. While driving, Kwame stops the car at a red light and Kofi spontaneously bolts out of the vehicle. However, her running speed is no match for Kwame, whose body, despite his age, remains remarkably fit. So in no time, Kwame brings Kofi to the fire station where he works and introduces her to a young firefighter under his command named Kinedu. It is during this moment that we learn Kwame is a captain at a private firefighting division, yet Kofi remains mute even when shaking hands with Chinedu. Afterward, Kwame leads the fake Kofi to the original Kofi's bedroom, whose whereabouts remain unknown to this day. As it turns out, Kwame's home is connected to the fire station. The moment Kwame leaves her alone, Kofi quickly removes the bandages covering her body for some reason. Her belly has grown even larger in just a few hours, but just as she begins to relax, Kwame suddenly returns to the room. Startled, Kofi frantically recovers herself from Kwame's view, even kicking his hand when he tries to help her by taking her clothes to wash, which only deepens Kwame's suspicion about his son's odd behavior. Finally, Kwame agrees to avert his eyes while Kofi undresses completely. Afterward, Kwame is puzzled when he finds a hairpin inside Kofi's jacket pocket. The next morning, Kwame is shown injecting steroids into his muscular frame, which explains why he is in such incredible physical shape for someone his age. However, at that moment, He feels disheartened by the decline in his strength as his muscles begin to fade. Frustrated, he realizes his body can no longer manage feats like climbing using only his arms, and he then places all of Kofi's clothes back into his son's bedroom, including the hairpin he found earlier. Kofi, who is only pretending to be asleep, hurriedly rewraps her bandages around her body. Afterward, Kwame gives some medical attention to Kofi's crooked nose, little knowing that it is all part of the fake Kofi's disguise meant to make it seem as though she has been through tough times. When Kwame starts trimming Kofi's hair, particularly over the area where the titanium plate is implanted, Kofi instinctively jerks her head away from him. To this moment, the fake Kofi still has not uttered a single word to Kwame, all in the hope of building a closer bond between father and son. Kwame assigns Kofi to work as an apprentice at the fire station, and on her first day working as a handyman, several firefighters unaware that Kofi is the captain's son begin gossiping about her, accusing her of being part of the LGBTQ+ community, especially considering Kofi's rather feminine appearance for a boy. Of course, Kwame does not tolerate his subordinates mocking his only son, and slightly irritated, he firmly orders them to respect Kofi. One day, during a fire drill simulation, Kwame and his team are in the middle of their routine when something triggers him. He suddenly goes into shock after seeing a charred simulation dummy, the sight of which seems to awaken dark memories from his past. Fortunately, Chinedu quickly steps in to end the simulation, and upon realizing that Kwame is distressed, after the day's work is done, Kwame invites Kofi to dinner. Unable to stand Kofi's silence any longer, Kwame starts yelling at her, scolding Kofi by comparing his mute son to the phone in his pocket that will not speak either. Just seconds later, Kwame notices Kofi's chest becoming wet as milk begins to leak from her breasts. Suspicious, Kwame demands an explanation from Kofi, but unable to bear the situation any longer, Kofi attempts to leave to be blocked by the locked door. She turns around and walks back toward Kwame, this time gripping her hairpin, and although one can probably guess what she is planning, before she can act, Kwame grabs Kofi and pulls her into a dance. Kwame's way of dancing is highly unusual as he repeatedly strikes Kofi's face while the music plays, which, of course, pushes Kofi to the edge of her patience. She retaliates by trying to stab Kwame with the hairpin, but her vicious attack is no match for Kwame's muscular frame, and he easily overpowers Kofi in the one-sided fight. Yet instead of keeping his only son close by, Kwame lets Kofi go out. After Kofi leaves, Kwame injects more steroids into his body, but for some reason, this time he recklessly increases the dosage predictably. His body collapses from the sudden overdose, and in his desperate attempt to enhance his strength, Kwame immediately suffers the consequences of his own carelessness. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Kofi is on a public bus where a gang of thugs is harassing a black woman sitting beside her. Unlike Amina, who would mercilessly deal with anyone who provoked her, Kofi decides to avoid conflict, gets off the bus, and heads back to Kwame's house, where she finds Kwame's lifeless body lying in the bathroom. At first, she considers finishing him off right then and there, but for some reason, Kofi hesitates, seeming trapped in an inner turmoil. At this moment, Kofi starts to realize that no one has ever been as kind to her as Kwame, and she tries to revive the one person who had shown her more care than her own parents ever did, calling him Dad for the first time. However, unfortunately, it is too late to save Kwame. The next day, Kofi seizes the opportunity to learn more about the real Kofi's identity as she rummages through the belongings of the original Kofi to help her better impersonate him. Kofi then discovers a yellow dress in a box and decides to try it on. Not long after, Kofi hears a noise coming from outside the bedroom door, and before being caught, she quickly hides inside the wardrobianly to find that it is Kwame himself, somehow rising from the dead. Instead of scolding Kofi, or at least becoming suspicious of his fake son, Kwame bursts into tears when he sees Kofi wearing the yellow dress, a dress that, it turns out, used to belong to the real Kofi when he was a child. This only strengthens Kwame's belief that the young person before him is truly his long-lost son. One day, Kofi joins a mission to save someone who has allegedly overdosed on sedatives. The captain orders Chinedu to assist him in performing CPR on the unresponsive victim, while Kofi is told to observe closely and watch what they are doing. But soon after, the victim's mother collapses to the floor, possibly in severe shock. Chinedu initially wants to help the mother, but Kwame insists that Chinedu stay focused on the male victim, and Kwame then instructs Kofi to administer artificial respiration to the mother. But despite her efforts, it is in vain. Captain Kwame and the others fail to save either of them, as the son dies from the overdose, while his mother passes away from a heart attack. Still, Kwame embraces Kofi, praising her for trying her best to save a life. Later on the way home, Taye accidentally stumbles upon news on his phone about a serial killer who has been terrorizing the area. The police sketch of the suspect, who is still at large, bears a striking resemblance to Kofi. Kofi seems to notice that Taye is growing suspicious of her, but instead of panicking, she responds to Taye's suspicious glance with a smile. While the other firefighters are enjoying themselves at a party, Taye confronts Kwame about Kofi's true identity, but strangely, Kwame scolds Taye, telling him to stop bringing up anything about his son. Refusing to give up, Taye threatens to expose Kofi's secret to Captain Kwame, and ignoring Taye's words, Kofi approaches Kwame and invites him to dance. Fast forward, Kwame's ex-wife, who has been estranged from him for a long time, visits to check on their son. To maintain her disguise, the fake Kofi remains silent in front of Kwame's ex-wife, and during dinner, Kofi's mother immediately senses that the person she just hugged is not her biological son. How could she not? Since she is the woman who gave birth to and raised Kofi. Kofi's mother is deeply familiar with the scent of her real son's body, and she loudly pleads with Kwame to be cautious about whom he trusts. But Kwame seems to defend the fake Kofi. Soon after, Kofi abruptly leaves them, experiencing excruciating pain as her belly rapidly swells, and unable to bear the pain, she impulsively tears open her own skin and flesh, exposing a large metal plate inside her abdomen. Having forgotten to lock her bedroom door, Kofi, writhing in agonis, caught by the real Kofi's mother, and now that the truth is revealed that the person Kwame brought home is actually a pregnant imposter, the real Kofi's mother rushes toward her, but instead of attempting to kill or hurt the fake Kofi, she tearfully begs Amina to take care of her ex-husband, no matter who the fake Kofi truly is. One day, Captain Kwame and Taye are sent to tackle a forest fire. Due to the decreasing oxygen levels in the vicinity of the blaze, Kwame's aging body suddenly becomes weak, and he collapses, and Taye rushes over to help the captain, trying to test his consciousness by forcing him to say his name. Disgusted by his subordinates meddling in Kofi's true identity, Kwame decides to secretly murder Taye. After successfully devising a plan to kill Taye, Kwame asks him to hold the gas cylinder he had brought earlier, and not long after, poor Taye dies in his attempt to reveal the truth to Kwame. Meanwhile, Kofi's body continues to deteriorate due to something growing rapidly inside her womb. Despite being less than a month into her pregnancy, Kofi can already feel the movements of the mysterious baby inside her. Just as Kofi is trying to cover up her pregnancy with bandages, Kwame suddenly enters the bathroom, and at that moment, Kwame finally speaks the truth about how he views the fake Kofi. It turns out that all along, Kwame suspected that the person before him was not his long-lost biological son, for Kwame knew the truth but refused to face the painful reality. In other words, Kwame wanted the person impersonating his son to continue filling the memory of his real son's existence. Even after Kwame accidentally sees Amina's true chest, he wisely covers her body back up with a towel. One evening, the firefighters throw another party, and Kofi, attempting to dance in a more masculine style, joins in, But amidst the chaos, Kofi glimpses a vision of Tai, her face burned and scarred. After that, some burly men carry Kofi onto one of the fire trucks, letting her dance on top of it instead of performing a macho dance. Yet Kofi performs an indecent dance reminiscent of the erotic moves Amina used to do when she worked as a car show dancer. And everyone's face immediately fills with disgust at Kofi's feminine dance. Even Captain Kwam, who arrives at an unfortunate moment, shows his displeasure without saying a word. Kwame leaves, embarrassed by Kofi's behavior in front of his crew, and returns to his room to continue drinking alcohol, while Kofi stays in the fire station surrounded by the vehicles. When the firefighters leave the station, Kofi secretly resumes her strange old habits, switching back to Kwame for reasons unknown. She plans to set her body on fire, but quickly abandons the idea, unable to withstand the pain from the flames burning her clothes. At the same time, Kofi complains of severe pain from sudden contractions, her body visibly falling apart due to the growth of the mysterious metallic-like object inside her womb. Unable to endure the suffering any longer, Kofi rushes to Kwame for help, and before entering Kwame's room, she catches a glimpse of her disfigured reflection in the mirror. When she reaches Kwame's bedroom, Kofi boldly tries to kiss the man who had cared for her all this time. Naturally, Kwame rejects the advance, but just as Kwame turns to leave the strange woman who had suddenly entered his life, Kofi screams in pain, begging Kwame for help, and Kofi also vomits a black liquid resembling oil from her mouth, unable to bear the horrifying sight. Kwame reluctantly agrees to help Kofi deliver the baby by any means necessary. At this moment, Kofi reveals her true identity to Kwame. Now Amina is fighting for her life, desperate to give birth to the thing that is devouring her body. In short, Kwame finally cradles the chubby baby born from Amina. But Amina loses consciousness. Seeing this, Kwame immediately tries to save Amina's life by giving her artificial respiration, but tragically, due to the severe injuries all over her body, Amina cannot be saved. The captain then continues to cradle and embrace Amina's newborn baby, which is covered in oil and grease, and through the tears of the mighty Kwame, it becomes clear that the baby's bones and skull are made of metal. Kwame holds the baby tightly, repeatedly saying that this baby was born to replace someone who had long been lost from his life. Thanks for watching our story today. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an update on the latest storyline. See you next time.